From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports.
Come on, let's go. Fantastic. Today, we've got actually two panels. We had so many people up here that are going to be talking about Web3 and some of the challenges and some of the potentials. We've got another four gentlemen coming up after this, some of them in the actual VC side and some of them in gaming itself. Right now, I've got the first three of the lineup here, and we'll start with some introductions. So, Cevat, do you want to start off and just give an introduction of who you are, and then we'll get all into the questions.
Sure. So my name is Cevat Yerli. I'm the founder of one of the largest independent game studios called Crytek out of Europe. I directed video games like Far Cry, Crysis, and Rise, Son of Rome, and many others actually. These games have reached over 100 plus million gamers, hundreds of awards, and some of the most critically acclaimed games, tapping on the team's shoulders, of course. Yeah, and my claim to fame is also the Cry engine, which was the world's first what you see is what you play game engine that formed the blueprint of modern engines. And I'm now also the founder and chairman of the Tomorrow Foundation, which is looking towards the future of the internet, which we call Internet of Life.
Cevat, so I have you to thank for the "Does it run Crisis" meme,
Yes.
which is cool. Joke for only the hardcore gamers in the room.
Absolutely.
I'm Paul Dawalibi. I have been investing the past 25 years in everything tech, and I'm focused in the last 4 years on gaming and metaverse specifically. I also host the biggest gaming industry podcast in the world called the Business of Esports, which everyone should subscribe to, and have a book coming out on the metaverse at the end of the year, and a show on CNBC on gaming coming this fall. So gaming guy, they call me the prophet. That's how most people know me.
Well, my name is...
You know, in Crysis, there was a guy called Prophet. Sorry.
Does it work? Yeah, okay. So, my name is Damian from Room 11. I'm coming from Japan. Worked 15 years there on large-scale project with NetEase, Tencent, and recently opened a AAA GameFi studio in Abu Dhabi. I'm also advisor for the Gento Metaverse Japanese project.
Okay, good stuff. And I'm Brian Rose. I'm the founder and host of London Real. We have long-form conversations with all sorts of different types of people. Last year, we've gone pretty heavy inside the blockchain, and I've been getting an education on gaming from people like Yatsu and people like Sebastian Bourget, and even people like, I think it's Kieran from Illuvium, this kinds of things. We've also made a couple investments in games like Cross the Ages and Fight Legends as well. So let's kick it off with the big elephant in the room and the name of this panel, which is potential and limits of growth. But what do you all believe are biggest challenges right now facing Web3 gaming? It's not necessarily where we wanted it to be at this point. Where do we need it to go? And, you know, even from a Web2 perspective, how would you rate it, say 1 to 10 of how we are with Web3?
Should I go first?
Yeah, you can go.
So if you look at the investment in Web3 right now, of course there's a multi-billion-dollar market emerging right now, but it has a reputational damage. There was a lot of games who didn't offer really a game, right? The core gameplays are not what traditional game developers would say these are games. So there's a disconnect between what game designers or game developers would call games and what Web3 developers call games. So there's a lot of focus on tokenomics and monetization as opposed to the fun. The number one question when people create games should be, why is it fun? The number two question should be, why is this game fun together with my friends, right? And then the question is, how are you going to make people make money, spend money, or earn money, right? Because there's a disconnect like that, there's a skepticism from traditional game developers. And also gamers, on the other hand, have a skepticism of being potentially ripped off. Further to that, it's all compounded by more complex user experience when it comes to Web3 games. You have to, the onboarding process and the wallet installation and connecting your wallets with the games, these are all still like early times. And at the same time, you have an absence of it on mobile. And there's a lot of friction in the way of getting to games. And further, like I said, the games are not fun.
I mean, Cevat, you sort of stole my answer. My tagline is "The future is fun." So fun is at the core, I think, of everything in gaming. I just have a question. Who here would consider themselves a gamer? Keep your hand up if you play a Web3 game regularly. Okay, so this is kind of the problem. And you sort of hit the nail on the head, which is most of these games are shitty. I mean, they're just bad games. They're just not fun. And the poster child of Web3 gaming, everyone talks about, well, what about Axie Infinity? There's all these players. I mean, Axie Infinity, my podcast has more listeners than Axie Infinity has players, right? Like, we're talking about a tiny drop in the bucket or in the ocean of gaming with maybe 1 million players, and it's doing this, it's not doing this. The fundamental problem is the games aren't fun. I think that's where it sort of starts and ends. And part of the problem is too many people doing Web3 gaming who don't come from the gaming world. They're coming from the crypto world, which I never really understood, because no one plays a game because it's built in C++, right? Like, no one cares what the underlying technologies are if the game's not fun. And so this is the disconnect I have, which is, who are these games really for? Is it just for emerging markets where, if you make 10 cents more a day, it's life-changing? I don't know. Maybe that's the market for them. But I think the reception, at least in the Western world, has not been good because the games aren't good. And, I see probably 50 decks a year of Web3 gaming, develop new studios building Web3 games, and every deck's the same. 10 slides on economics, tokens, one slide on, by the way, we're going to build a game, and then 10 slide on tokens, economics, tokens. And I'm going, wait a second, you glossed over the hard part, right? Like, the tokens are easy, the economics are easy. Everyone has figured out these business models. Making the game is the hard part. So that's where I think the challenges are.
I really agree with what you say, because so many marketing people right now are using really clever marketing tactics to raise a lot of money. And they come to me saying, hey, Damian, we raised $10 million. Now we need to make a game. Help. And that should be the opposite, right? So we need to have the game industry people more involved in the process. We need to have the Ubisoft, the Square Enix, the Activision Blizzard trying to make games. But the biggest problem is regulation. And if the securities are not, and really depending on that, then when we have more clarity, we'll probably have Activision Blizzard, the bigger guy, coming and say, okay, now we can spend 20, 50, $60 million on a game, and we know we'll be able to make a lot of money, and then have the SEC behind our back and checking if what we're doing securities or not.
I love that you used Activision Blizzard because they also haven't really made a good game in the last decade. But as an investor,
you can say that, right? You can say that.
As an investor, what scares me is you could spend $100 million on a game. You could spend $200 million on a game, and the game could still suck, and no one could play it. I mean, there's the gaming world is littered with these examples because at their core, it's art. And art is very subjective, and what people think is fun is subjective. And so, I know the point of the panel sort of investing in Web3 gaming. I think the layer on top of, hey, by the way, most of these games aren't fun, is it's scary from an investment standpoint because you're talking about investing in something that's fundamentally art and very, very subjective.
And so, and I do want to get into the SEC potentially regulating NFTs because it's an issue. But Damian, you said to me earlier, and you made a great point, Paul, that it takes at least $50 million to make a AAA game. And then Paul said, but money, you can throw $200 million, it doesn't necessarily make a great game. Damian, I'll start with you because I think you're setting up a studio potentially in Abu Dhabi. I don't know some of the details of that. But then the big question is then, how do you make a great Web3 game?
So for us, we're just making a great game. The team we have are executive from Ubisoft. They work also on Wargaming, on a lot of really large-scale titles, and they know how to make just a good game. Then using the blockchain technology for us as just a different purpose. For us, it's really more on how we can secure the auction house of the MMO side of the game by using the blockchain technology, on offering a secure environment for the users to trade safely without having the need on relying on, black market exchanges. So for us, it's really on making good games first and use the blockchain technology to protect the users and allow them to trade safely, right?
I just want to riff off this though, because I think one of the other challenges is the difficulty in communicating to the 3 billion gamers on the planet. How does Web3 make gaming better? Like, I don't think it's a question that anyone has really, and it's sort of a question I put to everybody. I believe in this future, but how do we articulate to those 3 billion gamers that Web3 makes gaming better? And I'm not convinced at the answers I've got so far.
Can I try?
Yeah. I may disagree.
So Cevat, what are those answers? And how do you think you can make a great Web3 game?
First, I think we have to look at technology, not for the sake of technology, but like you said, what value does it add, right? And how can it further the game industry? If you look at, as Paul said, there's 3 billion gamers. Today, 3 billion gamers spend about almost 100 billion in digital items in games, right? And these in-games items are illiquid, meaning they're stuck in the walls of each game, right? The future of games is about how you increase social interaction between gamers. And one of the next level of interaction is trade, like trading and owning across games. So if you look at the game industry, 2003, you had 1 billion gamers, and there was $10 billion market size. Today, like 19 years later, the world is with 3 billion gamers and $200 billion market size. And the average spending of the gamer has gone from $10 to about $67, right? And why? Because it went from single player to online connected gaming. Now, if you unlock the closed garden items business in an open format, irrespective from blockchain for now, if you whatever technology you need to do, you have to do this. If you unlock that and bring in interoperable assets, owner like avatars and items that you own, and your digital wallet if you want, but in a very simplified, easy way, and allow this to happen across games, and join an interconnected world of games, which forms the metaverse eventually, which in my definition is the future of the gaming and nothing else. Future of gaming and entertainment, but nothing beyond that because it's escapism. So by the time this happens, 2025, 6, 7, 8 maybe, you're going to have 5 billion people spending hundreds of billions in digital assets and be able to trade it. Further, if you expand from, if you look at the history of economy, you look at product business, then game as a service, free to play mainly, and now you're looking at what many people call play to earn, right? So if you turn the game experience into an opportunity to make a living, then you turn it from money to a job. So the flood of people that will come into fun games that allow me to make money, and trade my goods freely is the key to the ultimate success of the game industry.
Paul, do you agree or disagree? That the trading of the NFTs across platforms, is that enough to get people there?
No.
Or the tokens?
I mean, look,
Or is it never going to happen?
It's a beautiful utopia. We're also going to solve world hunger and crime, and it's a great fantasy. The reality is the big AAA publishers own these walled gardens and have zero incentive to open them up, like negative incentive to open them up. And so unless 3 billion gamers rise up and say, hey, I really want to use my weapon skin from Call of Duty and PUBG, they're not going to do anything. There will be no change. And so I don't really buy that future, and I think it's a little bit of a weak use case for Web3. The to earn part to me is, this is the the bottom of the barrel. This is crypto people, fishing for a solution or a problem for their solution. And the reason is I actually have a theory that maybe most people disagree with, but that as soon as you introduce to earn economics in a game, it automatically forces the game to be bad, meaning it introduces a construct and boundaries that make it so that you can't make a good game. It's like if I told you, make me a really fun slot machine. Could anyone make me a really fun slot machine that I want to play every single day? No, like because I limited it to a slot machine, I think you hurt the fun of the game inherently.
I disagree, because when you play a game, you spend your time, you pour your soul, you grow your sword to the legendary sword, right? And then you sell the sword to somebody else for like a 10x return. And a 12-year-old kid, after 2 years of playing, he just made a few $1,000s.
Yeah, but
I think that's the key.
That's not enough to make me come back. And I have the perfect example. I tell a story. I used to play World of Warcraft aggressively, okay? I have tens of thousands of hours in World of Warcraft. Now, there was a mount. It's an animal you can ride in the game. Very rare. It's called the Frost Saber mount, okay? And to get this, you had to do the same quest, which took about 45 minutes to an hour, about 1,200 times over, repeatedly, to get this mount, okay? I'm one of the few people that did this. There's not that many. I'm psycho like that. But I didn't do it because I was going to own it and sell it. I didn't do it to get an NFT of it. There was nothing driving me other than the fun of the game. And I think that is lost on crypto people, that it can be fun without having to earn something or own something, right? I don't own it or I can't sell it. There's nothing I can do with it.
I think you're both right, to be honest. to be honest,
Because what if you could own something? Doesn't mean you wouldn't have done that. That was that 30 weeks of work straight.
I mean, there's a rabbit hole here where as soon as they introduced, like as soon as you started getting gold farming in WoW, it ruined the game, like where you could farm gold and sell it for real money. So like there's a rabbit hole here where introducing to earn economics actually did ruin the game. But I mean, I don't know.
Damian, tell me, why are they both right?
Because you have different type of gamers and in different type of situation. So for me, coming from Japan, being a lot of licensing and publishing in Southeast Asia, they live off farming and reselling their minerals to get money and live off that. And exactly the same also in South America, where you have RuneScape, where they farm gold for 20 years almost right now, and they're used to it. So they rely on black market sites on eBay to resell their gold, and they live off that. And then on the other side, in Europe or in North America, there was a time where we could actually buy games, go back to GameStop, resell them, and use that money to buy another game. And now that right is stolen, right, from us. So with Web3, now you have the possibility so the people who are used to farm minerals and gold and whatever and live off that, they can do it with Web3. If you finish your game and you want to just sell your accounts, you can do it using the blockchain technology. And just imagine an MMO where you finish all your campaign, you're done with it, you're not touching it, and maybe you'll be able to just sell your account to someone else who will see value in that. And then in China, you have the VIP treatment where the pay to win. So you want to buy, full-blown, account with all maxed out, and because you want to enjoy yourself and you don't have the time to play. So I think there is a lot of different segments and players around the world. That's why I was saying you're both right. You have a need depending on the users.
Cevat, your thoughts? I want to get Paul's solution to all this.
I just look at it very pragmatic. I have 3 kids. Yeah, 2 of them are playing regularly games, and God knows how much money I spend on their accounts, thousands, right? And guess what? When they stop playing the game, that money is gone in a sinkhole, right? And for me, based on my own kid's story and how many parents feel like that, right? And how many gamers feel like that, unlocking that secondary sale free from the walls of the game is the single most important topic that blockchain or other technologies have to resolve. But I agree also with you, Paul, on you cannot do this without the involvement of publishers. There has to be a publisher revenue share model, because that's where the game comes from. They have to be included in this. Yeah, without their buy-in, there will be a lot of politics going on, a lot of closing the walls, right? They will do whatever it takes to protect their bread and butter. So these open platforms have to be sure that they are respecting the creator, respecting the gamer who built the item, and then let it be shared with a proper revenue share model. A bit like what happens in OpenSea today. When you are, as an artist, put up an NFT, and that gets sold again and again and again, you're part of the equation, you're part of the revenue share. Something like that in a more secure, less scammy, less today's crypto style play to earns, because I agree, today's crypto play to earn are horrible. It's crime almost, right? So you have to do it right. You have to make it fun. And the only fun games you can see today is in the traditional game industry. Their production values are higher because of investments. Their production value is higher because of expertise, right? And true passion to build gameplay first and not money first, right? So if these things come together in a nice way, I'm optimistic there will be a future of the game industry, which we call metaverse, which will unlock these economics and grow further.
How far?
Possible.
Yeah, I'm curious how far away you think we are from a Web3 game with 20 million players.
5 years.
I mean, the analogy with your kids I thought was an interesting one, right? Where you've spent all this money and now you have nothing out of it. But my counterpoint is when you go to a restaurant, right? You spend all this money and then you walk away, and then you literally shit out what you spent on. You leave with nothing of value, right? And I think I'm going to get.
But shit is not assets, right?
I'm going to get to the point, because you get nothing at the end other than the experience of that dinner. The dinner and the experience has to be great, right? If
You'll
the chef,
get an NFT with your receipt at the end.
but if the chef was lazy, right, he would send you home with a painting of the dinner, and now you feel like, well, if the dinner was no good, at least I got the painting, right? And so, I feel like not getting something, not earning anything, forced people to make great experiences. Without that, you sort of can lean on well, you're getting something. So it doesn't really matter if the experience was no good or if the game loop was no fun.
But is there no future gaming experience where you can also have an NFT, or there can't be a token alongside of it whatsoever?
I'm optimistic, but I haven't seen it yet.
Honestly, I think that whole ownership of assets and opening up the markets is at the core of fun games, is the only way we're going to reach a whole world of gamers effectively. In 10 years, we're going to have, on a natural progression, between 5 to 6 billion gamers anyway, right? But how do you engage more social activity beyond just playing together? And I think the key thing is co-creation and sharing, trading. These are the activities that will be underpinned by creator technology, which is effectively cut the middleman, empower you with some open platforms without walled gardens, and then, however, still respect whoever was the middleman, the publisher, by providing some contracts. I do believe that's the $1 trillion market. Today's game industry is going to go maybe $400 billion, but what is today a few billion is going to be $600 to $800 billion. That rise is going to be astronomical, mark my words.
And can we stop calling it Web3 gaming? I think that's also part of the problem.
Well, I try to avoid it.
Let's just call it gaming.
Future
right?
of gaming.
It's not even the future. Let's just call it gaming, right? I think putting it in this bucket, again, forces things that aren't natural.
So then, in your mind, Paul, Web3 gaming means that it's gaming with transferable NFTs and some kind of tokenized element, and it's on the blockchain, and that ruins the concept.
No, it forces us to compare it against other games, as opposed to against other Web3 games where everything sort of gets a pass.
And
right?
by
By putting everything in the same bucket, it's a more fair kind of conversation.
Yeah, I do agree, because there's no such thing as Web2 games. Never existed. Web2 games existed after Web3 games were invented.
Right, of course. Now, Damian, backstage you were saying to me that play to earn has been around for 20 years. And I'm curious what Paul thinks about this, because people have been going on eBay trying to sell their worthless goods they were going to shit out later. So there is an economy right? That was there. I don't know how big it was, but can you just comment on that, Damian, that play to earn's been around for a long time, as in people do want to exchange these assets for value? And what does that mean as far as the future of, dare I say, Web3 gaming?
So it's a $8 billion a year economy, the block market economy, the farming side.
Yep.
And most MMO company right now are missing about 30% of their profit, of their revenue, to those black market. So for video game companies, if they could embrace, especially the MMO, the live op companies, if they could embrace the blockchain, they could increase by 30% their revenue.
Why don't you think they have, though? What do you think is the blockage there?
The blockage is regulation, because you're all probably seen the announcement with Google Labs being investigated with the on the NFT probably classified as securities. So we are all waiting for more clarity on the regulation side, and once that's in, then we'll be able to move on with more opportunities for sure.
I mean, since Paul's here, I might as well keep asking, is there any place for a token in games or a game to be somehow empowered by the blockchain, or potentially for those assets to become NFTs and move off? And if so, how do you do it?
I mean, if I had that answer, I'd be running a game development company. If I had that answer, I think I don't have the answer. I believe that, yes, there's a place for it. I believe that someone will make it work. Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? I don't know. I believe that it will be part of the gaming ecosystem. The problem is today, I haven't seen it. Today, no one articulates the benefits well. And the few who articulate any benefit, it's offset by all the friction that it causes, right? Like, again, you guys alluded to it. You need a crypto wallet to play these games. Like, the average 10-year-old still doesn't have a MetaMask wallet, doesn't have whatever. Like, you're talking about friction in the on-ramps that affect how quickly a game and its player base scales. And so I think until we figured out those three things, does it make the game better? Is there no friction? And can we communicate how it makes the game better? We're not going to see any solutions. We're going to see a lot of wannabe solutions, but I believe in that future. I do believe there's a place for it. I don't know what the answers are. I like presenting them to people in the hopes that people come up with the answers.
You mentioned Axie to start off with, and how it's what, about 1 million users, I think we were saying. But what have we learned from Axie? What have been, now a couple years later, the pros from it? What have been the cons, including some of the tokenomics that maybe need to be rethought for these games of the future? Is play to earn a bad expression these days? But Cevat, just your thoughts.
I might make myself unpopular with this, but I don't think Axie Infinity was the game. Axie Infinity was like a press, raise up and then sell. That's not, for me, that's not a game. A game has, again, a passionate core loop that wants me to keep going from a second by second experience, and then it gets a minute by minute reason to continue. There are these loops of gameplay designs you have to incorporate second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, and that all has to make sense. The only thing that makes sense in Axie Infinity was the perspective of few days later down the road, I will make money, or months by months, I will make money. So it's like a meta game, you would call it, but no core game. For me, if I look at, I agree with Paul, and strongly I agree with him for once today.
Wow, that's the first time anyone really on stage has.
Now, but I do believe today there's now good sample of the future of gaming, or gaming of the future, whatever you want to call it. There's none. There's not a good example. There are many projects out there that define, hey, we're building AAA with crypto, but that's not the answer either, right? That's a too simplified way to look at it. You have to take the technology for a true benefit, and that benefit has to make sure that whoever plays the game has fun, and can build assets that he can transfer. I do believe that's the core of it. And then I also believe that your time is spent, which you also accompany with cash, you also pay besides your time, right? that time, if somebody's willing to pay for your character out of the game world wall, let's say you spend like 6 years on a character to develop it, and you have all kinds of stats. You can do that already in many MMORPGs, but like in an unofficial way almost, right? But not like I cannot sell this to you, and you can play a racing game with that today. Yeah, and that interoperability has this massive challenges by itself, but that's the holy grail. You have to make those standards. You have to make APIs that connect between different games. There are technical challenges. The friction to onboard is probably the most important one. Not just the average 10-year-old kid. The average 35-year-old gamer doesn't understand how to set up wallets. Yeah, the average age of a gamer today is 35, right? He wouldn't understand how to do this today. So we have to solve the authentication process and the login processes, make it as natural as possible, and make sure that the game is fun, and then use technology for something great or value.
And I just want to add, because I know there's a lot of crypto people here. I think a big part of the problem is how crypto people treat or look at gamers, right? And a big part of what I hear is, and I've heard this now multiple times, right? There's a game that comes out, Web3 game, you earn NFTs. Gamers sort of rebel, they don't want to play it, they don't care about the NFTs. And the crypto people inevitably do this. Well, you guys don't get it. You just don't get it. I mean, this is not a solution, right? Like the overlap, 56% of gamers, we actually commissioned the study, 56% of gamers would give up their traditional bank account for a crypto wallet. So you're talking about the most lucrative, most target-rich audience for crypto anything, and yet crypto people are failing more than any other group at reaching gamers, like failing more miserably at speaking to gamers. And so I think part of it, the challenge, if we're keeping on the theme here, is that how we speak to gamers, how we embrace those communities, how we get into it's a culture in and of itself, and understanding that and not just assuming that they don't get it because they don't want your NFT is, I think, a week out.
I appreciate that. Damien, your thoughts on Axie and anything we just mentioned there?
I think the biggest problem, and I'm a crypto investor too, but also coming from the video game industry, so I can see, understand both sides of it. It takes time to make a game. I mean, even a small game will take 2 years. An MMO game will take 5 years to develop. So now you see, a new project is announced. I'm going to buy the token. And you expect the game to be released within 6 months. So you see the token price plunge like 90% because you're scared because you don't see any announcement from the team. It's like, oh, that project is dead. I'm selling the token and project is dead. And people don't realize that the game will be out in 3 years. Or 5 years. It takes time to.
I mean, Brian, on Axie specifically, I think it proved that there is a market for this. Like, I think no question, it proved that there is, especially in developing countries, a market for this kind of thing. What it also proved is that if the game sucks, people don't come back, right? Like, I think Axie has been sort of the poster child of what could work and what has absolutely not worked. And so for that reason, I think they've been sort of a valuable part of the ecosystem. I don't think they will survive the next 10 years, but I think they have sort of, being first is hard, and I think they have sort of proven at least a couple of things in terms of what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, we learned a piece of information we didn't know before, but it doesn't mean that's the future of gaming. That's kind of what you're saying. I'm going to bring up the money guys, the capital guys next, but I wanted to get each one of your final thoughts on this. Obviously, this is kind of talking about limitations on growth, but just final thoughts, starting with you.
What part?
Just final thoughts on Web3, just any final thoughts you want to give.
I mean, I look at the future of the gaming industry, and gaming is digital manifestation of what we are. We are playful people. We are playful by nature. And as long as whatever technology, call it Web3 or blockchain or other technologies, support our playful nature and unlock the locked values right now, I do believe the future of gaming is bright. The investment opportunity is massive, in fact. I do believe we're looking at trillions of dollars down the line. and an average user spending of hundreds of dollars per year, compounded by the fact that also people will make money as well in whatever forms. It could be a job, it could be asset sales, it could be creation and open marketplaces, all kinds of ways. But that's the key. But it has to speak to our playful nature. It has to be to speak to our DNA. As long as that's taken, the industry has been going all the way up since the beginning of gaming, and it's going to keep towards a world that there will be a world of 6 to 9 billion people playing games. And the average age will be 40. You will have a 1-year-old touchscreen all the way to grandpa playing games. That's going to be the future. Like it or not, it's a trend.
Paul.
Final thoughts. I think Web3 will play an important part in the gaming ecosystem. I think it will be an important layer. It'll be part of the business models over the next 10, 20 years. But I want to reframe the conversation always. Web3 is not the future of gaming. It is not. Gaming is the future of entertainment and fun. Gaming, this revolution has already happened. Gaming is the revolution. Web3 in gaming is not the revolution. And so I think that I always try and reframe the conversation and focus on the games and on the fun because I think that's the future piece that we all need to be thinking about.
I agree with you both. You know? So, video game business is a 200 billion a year, industry. And when free-to-play game arrived, with the mobile era, everybody say free-to-play game will never work. It's not going to stay. Nobody will play free-to-play game on mobile. And now mobile game are 57% of the market share. And I really believe that Web3 will just take a big chunk of it. They will not dominate, but they will definitely take a big chunk of it. So Web3 is here to stay.
Gentlemen, thank you. I love a good heated discussion. So I hope everybody got a lot from that. Please give it up for the panel.
Thank you so much.
Guys.
Thank you.
And we're going to bring up the money guys here next. So if you guys could come on in, we're going to continue this discussion on Web3 gaming.